Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming. It's nice to see so many of you here, as Michael Howard used to say when he visited prisons. I'm Ben Wright, one of the BBC's political correspondents, and this afternoon we're going to tackle the question, what is the big Conservative idea? And it's an important one. Tory politicians have got a spring in their step these days in Westminster. There'll be an election within a year or so. They're ahead in the polls, 10-15% pretty consistently now. They're doing better in marginal seats. I think they know that there's a very good chance that they'll be in power within a year. So I think it's an important question to ask what they want to do with it and what their idea is. Now, after defeat in 2005, the same Michael Howard said the idea that the Tories could win an election on the right had been proved to destruction. And so the party changed very dramatically. David Cameron arrived, the image was softened, the party brand decontaminated. Out went the old torch logo, in came this squiggly green tree. But what, therefore, now does the Tory party actually stand for? Front bench speeches are a bit of a chocolate box of sort of fashionable political phrases like compassionate conservatism, progressive conservatism, communitarianism. David Cameron talks about wanting to see a post-bureaucratic state, and conservative think tanks write about red Toryism. But what does any of this stuff mean, and how does it translate into real politics? In policy terms, it's quite difficult to see where the differences are these days between certainly Labour and the Conservatives. There's a lot of overlap on welfare, education, health, foreign affairs. I mean, clearly now one big difference is over how to handle this recession, and I'm sure that's something that we will talk about. But there is a lot of overlap, and whoever wins the next election is going to have a pretty grim time because the public finances are terrible, and I think whoever wins is going to have to oversee some sort of mixture of public spending cuts and tax rises. So they're interesting times. And to chew over all of this, we've got a great panel and a broad spread of Conservative opinion. Let me introduce Iain Dale, first of all. Iain publishes the Total Politics magazine. He founded Politico's bookstore years ago and has been Chief of Staff to David Davis, and is now the man behind Iain Dale's online diary, which is vital reading in Westminster and has been shortlisted in the blog category for this year's Orwell Prize. Also shortlisted for his journalism is Peter Hitchens, who I'm sure you all know, very well-known Conservative columnist and reporter for the Mail on Sunday. Apparently a very long time ago, Peter Hitchens used to sell Socialist Worker on Cornmarket just around the corner. He doesn't do that anymore.
He gives it away.
He gives it away. Gives it away.
It was so long ago they still had Woolworths to sell it.
Now, working hard for a Conservative government is Ed Vaizey MP for Wantage and Didcot, very much part of the David Cameron inner circle. You've been a barrister, yes you are, a barrister, speechwriter, you ran a PR company, and is now the Shadow Minister for Culture. So look, to kick off, I think we should each take it in turns to tackle the question, what is the big Conservative idea, in no more than about 5 minutes. That'll leave plenty of time for discussion between us and you later on. Now, Ed, go first.
Thanks very much, Ben. As the only non-shortlisted speaker, I will try and be brief before handing over to my august shortlisted colleagues, perhaps show you the next 3 minutes why I haven't been shortlisted for anything under the Orwell Prize. My first reaction when I'm asked what is the Conservative big idea is to say that I sincerely hope that the Conservatives don't have a big idea. Because I'm a Conservative precisely because I have a huge suspicion of big ideas. Big ideas are, I think, the kind of things that have got this country into the position we're in today. Because big ideas require big spending and big taxes to pay for that big spending. And big ideas include big programmes like the New Deal, which was supposed to help youth unemployment and never got anyone a job, or big ideas to come like identity cards, which are going to cost billions of pounds and not only not make us more safe, but probably make us less safe, or big IT programmes that cost billions of pounds and end up achieving nothing. So big ideas, to me, smack of expensive wastes of money, massive intrusions into our privacy, or both. And the other thing about big ideas is that they generally are thought of at the centre and they're generally run from the centre. So I don't want to put forward a Conservative big idea this afternoon, but perhaps I could put forward some themes and principles, the kind of themes and principles that make me a Conservative and the kind of themes and principles that I think will govern the next Conservative government. They're themes and ideas like freedom, like localism, which Ben mentioned, communities, individuals, ideas that I think will change the way we do things in this country. Ideas that will be giving power back to the people and helping change and innovation take place at a local level. Big ideas that will bring in a small state rather than a big and overbearing state. We've actually put forward quite a few radical proposals, but perhaps people haven't noticed them in the search for one big idea. For example, in education, we're committed to giving the power to parents and to charities and indeed private companies to open new schools. In welfare, we want to see charities and not-for-profit organisations delivering benefits within local communities. In housing, a hugely contentious issue in this part of the world, we want to give the power back to local councils to set their own housing targets rather than having them set from Whitehall. In policing, we want locally elected police commissioners so that police become more accountable to the communities they serve. What brings those kind of policy ideas together is a central theme, which is that we believe we should give power back to local people and to communities to make the decisions that are right for them. And that means removing a lot of the central bureaucracy that's interfered so much in our lives and the lives of the people who work in the kind of services that we rely on. The central bureaucracy, the targets, remote organisations like regional development agencies that cost billions of pounds and deliver very little. On the bigger picture, I don't think the Conservatives have changed their outlook from when I first became a Conservative in the 80s. We believe in low taxes and sensible spending. In the long term, we don't want to be a country that is spending what it cannot afford. There has to be a close scrutiny of how much government spends. We have to ensure that as much taxpayers' money goes to frontline services. We want people to keep as much as possible of what they earn, and over time we do want to reduce taxes. I think one of the difficulties the Conservative Party has in getting its message across is that fundamentally I don't think we have changed. We remain interested in the issues that have motivated us to become Conservatives all along. We're not like New Labour, which went through a process of change in the 90s where it had to renounce a whole series of principles or key policies in order to show the country that it had changed. And in effect, New Labour was elected because it wasn't old Labour, and it spent 3 years telling the electorate what it wasn't rather than what it was for. I think the other problem, and I think it's a general problem and accounts for part of the malaise in politics, is that not only do I not believe in big ideas as a Conservative, but I think the political environment in which we live doesn't necessarily lend itself to big ideas. Consensus is a dirty word in politics, and it's certainly a dirty word in journalism. But in the 70s, there was no consensus. There was a clear dividing line, and you knew where you stood on issues like nuclear weapons, on issues like the nationalised industries, on issues like the trade unions. Those battles have been fought, and to a large extent, they have been won, although there remain skirmishes on the sideline, which might come up in questions. But in that sense, those big clashes of ideas, I think, are been and gone, and that is a general problem that politicians do face. Thank you.
Ed, thank you very much indeed.